I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping on my usual cup of tea when I saw it. A letter. It wasn't anything special at first glance, just a plain envelope with a fancy seal. But there was something about it, something that made my heart skip. I wasn't expecting any mail, and it wasn't from anyone I knew. I picked it up slowly, my fingers tracing the strange embossed design on the front. Who could this be from? I whispered to myself. My hands shook just a little as I broke the seal and pulled out the letter. Dear Regina Carter, we regret to inform you that your late husband, Charles Carter, has left you an inheritance. I stopped reading right there. What did they mean, inheritance? Charles had never been one for wealth, never talked about money. We lived simply, and that was fine. So why would a lawyer be writing to me about an inheritance I didn't even know existed? And why would it have anything to do with Charles? The letter went on to explain that the estate was substantial and there were legal matters to address. I glanced at the bottom. This was no joke. It was real, and it was happening right now. I could feel my heart racing. Was this a mistake? Or was there something about Charles I didn't know? Maybe it was just a prank, but deep down I knew I couldn't ignore it. There had to be answers, and if they were buried in this strange inheritance, then I needed to find them. I put the letter down and stared at the wall, trying to make sense of it all. The whole thing seemed like a bad dream, but I knew one thing for sure. I had to see this through. I couldn't let this opportunity slip away without knowing what it meant for me and for Myra, my daughter. I grabbed my purse, stood up, and walked toward the door. The lawyer's office wasn't far, but what awaited me behind that door? I had no idea. It's funny, you know. When you've lived a life as long as mine, you don't always stop to think about all the little pieces that brought you here. You just keep going, one step after another. But lately, all these thoughts keep coming back. The past feels like it's creeping up on me, and I can't ignore it anymore. I always considered myself a practical woman. Life wasn't easy, but I made it work. After Charles passed, it was like the ground beneath me shifted. We'd been married for almost 30 years, and in all that time, I never thought of us as rich, at least not in money. We were rich in love and family. That's what I always believed. But love doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't send your child to college, and it certainly doesn't keep your lights on after a tough month. When Charles died, it was sudden, too sudden. 1 minute, he was here, and the next, he was gone. The grief was overwhelming. But what hit harder was the quiet emptiness he left behind. He wasn't just my husband. He was my rock, and I had to become my own, even though I had no idea how to do it. I remember how Myra was just a teenager at the time. She was too young to lose a father, and I was too tired to be everything she needed. But somehow I made it work. I started working more, took on extra shifts, and pushed myself harder than ever. I wanted to give Myra everything I never had, to make sure she never felt the weight of my struggles. I sacrificed a lot for her. For us, I put my own dreams on hold to build a future for her. When I think about it now, I wonder if that's why we've always had such a strong bond. Myra knew, even as a young girl, that I was working for her, that every sacrifice I made, every late night, every weekend I spent away from home was for her future. She never complained. She understood, but I always felt like something was missing between us. I know we're close, but I couldn't help but feel like there was a part of her I didn't fully know, a part of her that was too wrapped up in my own world to see. And now, I wonder if this inheritance might somehow tie into that. What if there was more to Charles than I ever knew? He'd always been so private about his past. Too private, if you ask me. And now, I can't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this inheritance has something to do with the secrets he kept from me. Why didn't he ever mention any of this? Why didn't he share his past with me? If we were supposed to have no secrets, then why did he leave me in the dark all these years? I shake my head. I've spent my life taking care of others, always looking ahead. But now I need answers, answers I never thought I'd have to ask. Myra, she deserves the truth. She deserves to know what's going on, but first, I need to understand it myself. And I won't rest until I do. I hadn't been prepared for it. Not like this. When I pulled up to the estate, I thought I'd be walking into a small office or maybe a modest house, just a piece of land with a few rooms. But what I saw, it took my breath away. The mansion stood there, tall and proud, like something out of a dream. A huge, old stone house with towering windows and ivy creeping up the sides. The land stretched out before me like a field of possibilities, rolling hills and gardens that went on for miles. It felt too much for someone like me. I never imagined that my simple life would lead me here. I barely knew what to think, let alone what to feel. Awe? Fear? Disbelief? I stepped out of the car, my heels clicking on the gravel as I walked toward the grand front doors. The house was silent, too silent, like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to discover something. As I approached, a man in a dark suit opened the door. He was the lawyer, Mr. Hudson, the one who'd sent me that letter. "Mrs. Carter, welcome," he said with a formal, almost rehearsed smile. "I trust the journey wasn't too taxing?" I nodded, trying to steady my nerves. "It's bigger than I imagined," I said, my voice catching a bit. I wasn't sure what to say. My mind was racing. What had my husband, Richard, been involved in all these years? He led me inside, through grand hallways lined with portraits of people I didn't recognize, each one staring at me like they knew something I didn't. My stomach churned, and I felt small in that vast cold space. "This is the estate," he began. "But it's more than just a home. This property has a rich and secretive history, one that your late husband, Richard, was deeply involved in." I stopped dead in my tracks. "Richard?" My heart skipped a beat. I had never heard of anything like this. My husband? Involved in something secretive? My mind reeled. Richard wasn't the type for mysteries. He was steady, dependable, or at least that's what I thought. The lawyer turned to face me, his expression serious. "Yes, it seems that your husband's involvement with this estate wasn't just as a caretaker. There are matters here, complicated, dangerous matters, that go far beyond what anyone knew. And Mrs. Carter, I'm afraid to say that you may be tangled in something more than just an inheritance." My stomach dropped. What was he talking about? Dangerous matters? This wasn't just about a house, a piece of land. This was something else entirely. "Is this why Richard never told me about any of this?" I asked, barely above a whisper. Mr. Hudson hesitated, then spoke slowly. "The estate is tied to an old family secret, one that has remained hidden for generations. If you want to keep it, Mrs. Carter, you'll need to solve this mystery. There are people who will do whatever it takes to stop you from uncovering the truth." I felt the walls of the mansion close in around me. The weight of his words hung in the air like smoke, suffocating everything I thought I knew. My husband, the man I thought I knew inside and out, what had he been hiding? And why was I suddenly thrust into the middle of this mystery? I had no choice but to find out, for myself, for Myra, and for the truth. The days at the estate had begun to blur together. Every corner of that grand house seemed to whisper secrets, and the more I searched, the more I felt like I was peeling back layers of a life I hadn't known. A life my husband, Richard, had kept hidden from me for all these years. I started with his study, the room he had always kept locked. It was a small, cluttered space filled with old books, papers, and framed photos of us, his family. But today, it felt different. I ran my fingers over his desk, over the wooden drawers, the leather chair he always sat in when he worked late. There was a comfort in touching the things that once belonged to him, but the air was thick with tension, like his presence was still here, but not quite. Myra had come with me, of course. I couldn't leave her behind, not with everything going on. But she wasn't as eager to uncover the past as I was. She had been distant, quiet. Every time I found something interesting, she would look at me with that concerned expression, like she wanted to say something but didn't know how. "Mom, don't you think it's time to let it go?" she asked one evening as I sifted through another pile of Richard's old paperwork. "This isn't healthy. You're getting too deep into all this. You're chasing ghosts." I stopped and looked at her. Myra had always been the level-headed one. She'd grown up faster than I wanted her to, taking on a maturity that made her wise beyond her years. But this was different. This was about Richard, about us, and about the future. I didn't know how to explain it to her. How could I, when I didn't even understand it myself? "I know you're worried, honey," I said softly, trying to keep my frustration in check. "But this is something I have to do. I have to understand what he was mixed up in, what he was hiding from me. I need to know the truth." She crossed her arms, watching me with a mixture of concern and hurt. "And what if the truth hurts, Mom? What if it's better to leave it alone? I sighed, feeling the weight of her words. I don't know. I really don't, but I can't ignore this, Myra. Not now. Not when it's all right in front of me. She was quiet for a long moment before she spoke again. Just don't lose yourself in it, okay? Her words lingered in the room as I turned back to the papers on Richard's desk. Myra was right in some ways. I could feel myself slipping into a place I wasn't sure I wanted to go. But I couldn't stop now. Not when I was so close to something. And then, just as I was about to close a drawer, I found it. A small, folded letter hidden under a stack of old journals. It wasn't addressed to anyone, just a scrap of paper with a familiar yet unfamiliar handwriting. I unfolded it carefully, my heart pounding as I read. Richard, I'm sorry, but I couldn't keep this secret any longer. You need to know the truth about your father's business dealings. I never wanted to hurt you, but what he's involved in could ruin us all. If you want to keep the estate, there are things you'll need to do, and some things you'll need to let go of. You've already crossed lines I never thought you'd cross. Don't let it cost you everything. My breath caught in my throat. I reread the letter twice, 3 times, but the words didn't change. My husband, the man I thought I knew, what had he been involved in? Betrayal? Secrets? Business dealings I'd never been told about? I sat back in the chair, the letter shaking in my hands. This wasn't just a simple inheritance. This was a warning. Mom? Myra's voice broke through my daze, pulling me back into the present. I looked up, her face filled with concern. I found something, I said, my voice tight. Something big. Myra stepped closer, her eyes scanning my face. What is it? I handed her the letter, watching her as she read it. Her expression shifted, confusion giving way to shock. What does this mean? What's he talking about? I shook my head. I don't know yet, but I think Richard was mixed up in something much darker than I ever imagined. And now it's all tied to this estate. Myra looked at the letter again, her gaze distant. This isn't just about the inheritance, is it? It's about everything he kept from you. I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of it all settle on me. And I have to find out what? For him, for me, for us. But the more I uncovered, the more questions I had. And the closer I got to the truth, the more dangerous it seemed. The deeper I dug into Richard's past, the more I realized that the life I thought I knew was built on a house of lies. The clues, the whispers, the warnings, they all pointed to something I wasn't ready to face. Something so dark and dangerous, I could barely wrap my mind around it. I spent days sifting through every piece of paper, every letter, every journal Richard had left behind. I found more letters from his childhood friend, letters full of cryptic references to business dealings and keeping our hands clean and crossing lines. But the more I read, the more I felt like I was chasing a ghost, someone I couldn't understand but couldn't walk away from either. Then, one night, as I combed through a dusty old box in the attic, I found a photo that made my heart stop. It was a picture of Richard, standing with a group of men I didn't recognize. They were dressed in suits, but there was something about their posture, their smiles, that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The kind of men you don't get too close to. The kind of men I never wanted to know. I stared at the photo for what felt like hours, the weight of the truth pressing on me. Richard had been part of something, a criminal organization that operated in the shadows, pulling strings, making deals that were never meant to see the light of day. And now, the inheritance was tied to it all. I was jolted out of my thoughts when Myra knocked on the door. She had been distant lately, avoiding me when she could. I could see the frustration in her eyes, the way she tried to stay out of the conversation, as if she didn't want to be pulled into the mess I was unraveling. "You're still digging into this?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. "Mom, this has gone too far. You've already found enough. You've uncovered things that should stay buried." I looked at her, my heart heavy. "I can't just ignore it, Myra. This is about Richard. It's about us. I have to know what he was involved in. I have to know the truth. Do you really? What good is the truth if it destroys everything we've built?" She shot back, frustration lacing her words. "We've been through enough." "I've been through enough. You've spent all this time chasing ghosts, and now you're risking everything, our safety, our peace, just for answers that might not even help us. Maybe Richard's secrets should stay in the past." I felt a pang of guilt, of anger, a knot forming in my stomach. I'm not just doing this for me, Myra. This inheritance, this estate, it's tied to something much bigger than us. If I don't figure out what Richard did, we could lose everything. The people involved in this, they won't just let us walk away. I can't just sit back and pretend like I didn't see the signs. She took a deep breath, clearly torn. But what if the cost is too high? What if it's better to leave it all behind, protect our family, and move on? Do you really want to get caught up in this mess? What good is knowing the truth if it breaks us? I didn't have an answer. My heart was torn in two, caught between my need for the truth and my desire to protect Myra, to shield her from the very thing I was chasing. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized that there was no turning back. If I didn't confront the people involved, if I didn't confront the ones who had pulled Richard into this world, I might never get the chance to escape the shadows of his past. I needed to know who those men were in that photo. I needed to know what Richard had done to protect us, or to destroy us. And if I had to confront them, if I had to face the danger head-on to keep my family safe, then that's exactly what I would do. But the truth was, I wasn't sure I could face it. And Myra? She wasn't sure she could stand beside me anymore. "I can't stop, Myra," I whispered, my voice trembling with emotion. "I can't rest until I understand why Richard kept all of this from me. Why he kept it from us." She turned away, her face a mask of anger and hurt. "Then I guess you're on your own, Mom." I watched her walk out, leaving me alone with the weight of the choices ahead. The stakes had never been higher. The stakes were now life or death, and I had no idea if I could survive the truth. The air in the mansion felt heavy that evening, like the walls were closing in on me, and the weight of everything I'd uncovered was threatening to suffocate me. Myra hadn't spoken to me all day, and I could feel the tension hanging between us, thick and sharp. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the papers in front of me, but my mind was a million miles away. It wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It wasn't just about uncovering Richard's secrets. It was about the price I was willing to pay and whether it was worth losing my daughter over. That's when Myra walked in, her face flushed, eyes bright with anger. I didn't even need to ask what was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. "You've gone too far, Mom," she said, her voice shaking with frustration. "You're so consumed by this inheritance, this mystery, that you've forgotten what really matters. You've forgotten me." I opened my mouth, but she cut me off, her words coming faster, sharper. "All you've done is chase after something that might destroy us. That might destroy me. You've been ignoring everything that's right in front of you. All I wanted was to have you back, but instead, you've thrown yourself into this obsession, this search for something that doesn't even matter anymore." I stood up, my heart pounding, unsure of what to say. "I'm not doing this for me, Myra. I'm doing this for us. For the future. I can't just let go of all the questions, all the things Richard hid from us." She shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. "But you're letting it consume you. You're letting it take everything away. You're pushing me away for the sake of a ghost from the past. I don't want to be part of this family's legacy, Mom. I don't want to be part of the darkness Richard left behind." I felt like a punch had landed in my stomach. I had always thought that Myra and I were untouchable, that nothing could come between us. But now I saw it clearly. My obsession with the inheritance had put a wedge between us, a deep divide I didn't know how to cross. "I'm sorry, Myra," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I didn't mean to push you away. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you don't understand. This estate, this mystery, it's bigger than anything I've ever faced. It's about who Richard was, about understanding the truth. I can't just walk away from it." She took a step back, her voice trembling with emotion. "And I can't keep waiting for you to come back to me, Mom. I can't keep pretending everything's fine when you're lost in this. If you keep chasing after this inheritance, if you keep diving deeper into this dark past, I'm not sure I can stay." The words hit me like a cold slap. I stood frozen, staring at her, my heart in pieces. Myra, my daughter, the one person I had fought so hard to protect, was ready to walk away. I could see the pain in her eyes, the way she was holding herself together just to keep from breaking in front of me. "I don't want you to leave," I said quietly. The words hanging between us, raw and vulnerable, but I don't know how to stop. How do I walk away from something that's been eating at me for so long? How do I just Forget. Myra's expression softened for a moment, but there was no mistaking the fear and hurt behind her eyes. You walk away by choosing me, Mom, by choosing us. Before it's too late. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down into a void. The truth, the inheritance, it was all right there, waiting for me. But at what cost? Could I live with myself if I lost Myra? Could I live with the guilt of choosing something over my own daughter? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. Myra turned to leave, and I stood there, unable to stop her. I wanted to reach out, to tell her I would let go, that I would choose her. But the weight of everything I had uncovered, everything I needed to know, pulled me in the other direction. And in that moment, I knew I was standing at a crossroads. The question was no longer about Richard or the estate. It was about me. What kind of mother was I willing to be? The moment I opened that final drawer, I knew this was it. The last piece of the puzzle I had been chasing for weeks. My hands shook as I pulled out a thick envelope, sealed with Richard's handwriting on the front. The envelope was worn, the edges frayed like it had been tucked away for a long time. My heart pounded in my chest as I carefully peeled it open, the weight of everything I had uncovered pressing down on me. Inside was a letter, one I could barely bring myself to read at first. But as I unfolded it and saw Richard's familiar handwriting, it was as if everything I had learned up until now was leading to this moment. If you're reading this, then I've made the hardest decision of my life. I'm not proud of what I've done, but I can't undo the past. I've been a part of something dark, something that will follow me forever. I've made choices that I can never take back. The estate, the money, it's not for us. It's for Myra, for you, and for her future. You need to protect her no matter what comes. The people I've crossed will never let us go. The inheritance is the only thing that can keep her safe. Don't let my sins define her. Don't let her know the man I became. I felt my breath catch as I read the last lines. Richard had known the gravity of what he was involved in, and he had left this estate not as a gift, but as a safeguard, something to protect Myra from the fallout of his criminal past. He had written this letter to his former associate, someone who clearly had a hand in whatever dark dealings had led to his death. It wasn't just an inheritance. It was a cover-up, a way to hide the truth from the world and protect his family at any cost. I sat back, staring at the letter, the weight of it crashing down on me. Richard had known he was never going to escape his past, but he had tried to give us a chance to survive it, even if that meant keeping the truth buried forever. Now, I had a choice to make. I looked at the letter again, the words burning in my mind. Keep the estate, preserve the lie, or expose everything, reveal Richard's secrets, destroy the inheritance, and risk everything in the process. The house, the money, the power. It could all be mine if I chose to keep the estate, to protect Myra's future. But at what cost? Would it destroy her peace? Her sense of who her father really was? Could I really look her in the eye and pretend like I didn't know the truth? I thought about Myra, her anger, her frustration with everything I had become. I thought about the way she had begged me to let go of the past, to choose her, to choose us. She deserved the truth, but was it my place to expose it? What would the fallout do to her, to the life we had fought so hard to build? Tears blurred my vision as I stared at the letter. The truth had always been a burden, but now it felt like a weight I couldn't carry any longer. Could I let the past define our future? I was torn. The decision felt impossible. If I kept the estate, we could go on, protected, sheltered from the truth. But I would never be able to escape the guilt of hiding Richard's dark past. If I exposed everything, I risked losing everything, the money, the house, the future Myra could have. But at least I would be free of the lies. I had to decide, and soon. I woke up that morning with a sense of clarity, something I hadn't felt in a long time. The weight of the decision still hung heavy in the air, but it no longer felt like a burden. I had made my choice. I couldn't keep the estate. I couldn't hold on to the wealth, the power, or the false sense of security it promised. I had spent too many days obsessing over a past I couldn't change, too many nights torn between the truth and the lies I had lived with. Richard's secrets, his mistakes, they were his to carry, not mine. And they weren't worth tearing my family apart for. I stood in front of the lawyer's office, the building looming in front of me. My fingers gripped the letter in my hand, my official decision to decline the inheritance. I had thought about this moment so many times, but now, standing here, it felt like I was walking away from everything I had ever known. Everything I had worked for. The lawyer greeted me with a professional smile, but I could see the surprise in his eyes as I handed him the letter. "You're sure about this, Mrs. Carter?" he asked, clearly taken aback. "I'm sure," I replied, my voice steady. "I don't need the estate. I don't need the money. What I need is peace. What I need is to honor my husband's memory, the truth of who he really was, and move on with my life. I can't do that while holding on to a lie." The lawyer hesitated for a moment, then nodded, accepting my decision. He made the necessary arrangements, but I felt an odd sense of relief as I left his office. It was done. The weight had been lifted. Later that day, I returned to the estate, the place that had once felt like a prison and now felt like a memory, one I was ready to leave behind. Myra was waiting for me, her expression uncertain. She had seen the change in me, the way I carried myself now with purpose and resolve. She didn't speak at first, but I could see the questions in her eyes. "I turned it down," I said quietly. "The estate. It's gone." For a moment, there was silence between us. Then Myra walked over and hugged me, and I could feel the tension in her body melt away. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she whispered. I didn't understand before, but I see now that this was the right choice. I held her tightly, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. The arguments, the pain, the uncertainty, dissolve in that moment. "I didn't want to lose you, Myra. I've been so caught up in the past that I almost lost what really mattered. I'm sorry." She pulled back and smiled, a small but genuine smile. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. We'll move forward together." I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. Myra and we were back. We were stronger than before. I had lost so much in the pursuit of truth, but in letting go, I had gained something far more precious, peace, and the chance to rebuild what I had almost lost. As we sat down together on the porch, watching the sun set over the quiet estate, I realized that this was the life I had always wanted, a life where the past didn't haunt me, a life where I could breathe freely again. I had let go of the weight of Richard's secrets, and in doing so, I had found a new sense of freedom. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready. Ready to face whatever came next, with Myra by my side, and the peace of knowing that the truth, no matter how painful, was always the best path forward. The days that followed were filled with a quiet sense of peace. I had let go of the past, but I knew that wasn't the end of my journey. It was only the beginning. I had spent so much of my life carrying burdens that weren't mine, living with regrets and guilt that weighed me down. But now I was free to finally embrace the life I deserved. With Myra by my side, I decided it was time to give back, to share the strength I had found with others. I opened a community center, a place where women like me, women who had lived through heartache, loss, and uncertainty, could come together, find support, and build a new future. It wasn't about the past anymore. It was about second chances, about standing tall and finding hope, even when it felt like the world was against you. Walking through the doors of that center, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of purpose. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. As I stood on the porch of the center that evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt the weight of everything I had been through finally lift. The shadows of the past were behind me now, and ahead lay only the promise of new beginnings. I turned to Myra, who stood beside me, smiling. Together, we walked into the sunset, ready for whatever came next. The journey had been long, but it had led us to this moment, a new chapter, a new life, and this time, I was ready.